The December wind cut through Elena's thin coat like broken glass as she stood outside Blackwell Tower, watching her husband through floor-to-ceiling windows. Marcus was laughing that deep, genuine laugh she hadn't heard in months, his hand resting possessively on the small of Sienna Hart's back as they toasted champagne with his business partners. Elena's hand moved instinctively to her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant, 7 months of carrying his daughter while he built his life with someone else. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the building security. "Ma'am, you need to leave the premises. Mr. Blackwell has requested you be escorted off the property if you attempt entry again." She stared at the message, her breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. 3 hours ago, she'd tried to reach Marcus's office to tell him about the cramping, about the spotting the doctor said was concerning. The receptionist, Sienna's best friend, had called security instead. "Mrs. Blackwell." A security guard approached, his expression apologetic. "I'm going to have to ask you to move along. I just need 5 minutes with my husband." Mr. Blackwell was very clear. "No contact," he said. The guard hesitated. He said if you show up again, he'll file for a restraining order. The words landed like physical blows. Elena looked down at her worn boots, the ones she'd been wearing when they met 4 years ago at that charity gala. Back when she was still hiding from her family's name. Back when she thought love meant more than money. Behind her, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Elena Catherine Volkov," the woman said, her Russian accent slight but unmistakable. "Get in the car." Elena's breath caught. She hadn't heard that name, her real name, in 4 years. "Grandmother. Now, child, before you freeze to death on the street like some Dickens novel, your grandfather would be ashamed of how you're letting that man treat you." Elena glanced back at the tower one more time. Through the windows, she could see Sienna pressing against Marcus, her red dress, a deliberate contrast to everything Elena had become: tired, swollen, invisible. She got in the car. The Volkov estate in Connecticut was exactly as Elena remembered, imposing, coldly beautiful, and utterly suffocating. She'd run from this place 4 years ago, desperate to be anyone other than the heiress to Russia's largest diamond empire. Her grandmother, Katerina Volkov, led her through marble hallways lined with portraits of ancestors who'd survived revolutions and wars and business battles that destroyed lesser families. "You look terrible," Katerina said bluntly, pouring tea in the library. "When did you last eat properly?" "This morning." "Toast." "Toast?" Katerina's voice dripped with disdain. "My granddaughter, heir to $15 billion, eating toast, while her husband wines and dines as mistress in a penthouse she could buy with pocket change." Elena sank into a leather chair, exhaustion overwhelming her. "I don't want to talk about Marcus." "Of course you don't. You want to pretend that changing your name to Elena Morgan and marrying some tech entrepreneur makes you different from who you are." Katerina set down her teacup with a sharp click. "But you cannot run from blood, Elena. And Volkov blood does not beg for scraps from men who should be grateful to breathe the same air. I loved him." Past tense. "Good." Katerina pulled a folder from her desk. "I had my people investigate Marcus Blackwell the moment you announced your engagement. I knew he was wrong for you then. I know he's destroying you now." Elena stared at the folder. "What's in there?" "Everything. His affair with Sienna Hart began 18 months ago, not 6 months like he claims. He's been systematically draining your joint accounts, $340,000 transferred to his personal holdings over the past year. And most interesting." Katerina opened the folder, revealing financial documents. Blackwell Technologies is drowning in debt. The company he built his reputation on is 3 months from bankruptcy. The room spun. Elena gripped the chair's arms. "That's impossible. Marcus just closed a major deal with investors I control through shell companies." Katerina's smile was sharp as a blade. "I've been buying up his debt, Elena, piece by piece. Blackwell Technologies owes me $47 million. He just doesn't know it yet, because the paperwork doesn't have the Volkov name anywhere." Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. "Why?" "Because I'm your grandmother. Because Volkov women protect their own. and because Marcus Blackwell is about to learn what happens when you betray the wrong family. Before Elena could respond, sharp pain lanced through her abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. Katerina was at her side instantly. "Elena, what's wrong?" "The baby. Something's..." Another contraction hit, stronger this time. "Grandmother, I think something's wrong." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Presbyterian Hospital's private wing was reserved for patients who valued discretion as much as care. Elena lay in a bed surrounded by machines monitoring her baby's heartbeat, while Dr. Sarah Chen reviewed ultrasound images with a furrowed brow. "The spotting is concerning," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Combined with the contractions at 7 months, we need to be cautious. I'm putting you on strict bed rest for the next 2 weeks, minimum. Can I go home? Do you have support at home? Someone to help with meals, medication, keeping you horizontal?" Elena thought of the tiny apartment she'd been living in since Marcus kicked her out last month. Thought of the neighbors who pretended not to hear her crying through the walls. "She'll stay with me," Katerina announced from the doorway. "I have a full medical staff on call at the estate. Whatever she needs." Dr. Chen looked relieved. "That's ideal. Mrs. Blackwell, I cannot stress enough how serious this is. Any more stress, any physical exertion, and we could be looking at premature labor or worse." After Dr. Chen left, Elena stared at the ceiling tiles, counting them to avoid thinking about the fact that she'd almost lost her daughter while Marcus was probably still celebrating with Sienna. "He doesn't know, does he?" Katerina asked quietly. "About the baby being at risk?" "I tried to tell him." His receptionist called security. Katerina's jaw tightened. "Call him now." On speakerphone. "Grandmother, I don't think." "Call him, Elena. Let me hear how he speaks to the mother of his child when she's in the hospital." With shaking hands, Elena dialed Marcus's number. It rang 4 times before he answered, irritation clear in his voice. "Elena, I told you we communicate through lawyers now. This is harassment." "Marcus, I'm in the hospital. The baby." "Jesus Christ, not this again. You're always having some crisis that needs my attention." "I'm done, Elena. Done being manipulated. Done being guilted. She's having contractions at 7 months, you bastard." Katerina cut in, her voice like ice. "Your daughter might die. And you're whining about being inconvenienced." Silence. Then, "Who is this?" "Someone who knows exactly who you are, Mr. Blackwell. And soon, everyone else will too." Marcus laughed. A cold sound. "Let me guess. One of Elena's dramatic friends trying to guilt me back into a failed marriage. Tell Elena I'll see her in court for the custody hearing. And tell her to stop trying to use our daughter as a weapon." The line went dead. Elena felt tears slide down her cheeks. Even now, even with their daughter at risk, Marcus assumed she was lying, manipulating, playing games. Katerina set down the phone with careful precision. That man just made the final mistake of his life. "Grandmother, please. I just want to rest." "Of course, rest." Katerina pulled the blanket up around Elena's shoulders with surprising gentleness. "And while you rest, I'm going to make some phone calls. By the time you wake up, Marcus Blackwell will begin to understand what it means to have Katerina Volkov as an enemy." As Elena drifted toward sleep, medicated and exhausted, she heard her grandmother's voice in the hallway speaking rapid Russian to someone on the phone. She caught fragments. "Call in every debt. I want his investors contacted. File the paperwork tonight." For the first time in months, Elena felt something other than despair. She felt the stirring of something that might have been hope, or might have been rage. Sometimes, she was learning, they felt exactly the same. Marcus Blackwell woke at 6 a.m. to 17 missed calls from his CFO, 9 from his lead investor, and 1 from his attorney with the subject line, "Urgent. Call immediately." Beside him, Sienna was still sleeping, her platinum hair spread across the pillow like a halo. He'd bought her this penthouse 6 months ago, right after Elena had gotten too pregnant to be sexy anymore. Sienna understood him in ways Elena never had. She understood ambition, success, The need to be seen with someone who elevated your status. His phone rang again. Robert Chang, his CFO. Robert, it's 6 in the morning. Marcus, we have a serious problem. I just got an email from our primary lender. They're calling in the loan, all $35 million of it. Due in 30 days. Marcus sat up abruptly. That's impossible. We have terms. We have. The loan was sold to a private equity firm yesterday. New owner, new terms. Marcus, if we can't pay, they'll force us into Chapter 11. Who bought it? Company called Frost Holdings. Based in the Cayman Islands. I've never heard of them, but Marcus. They own almost all our debt, $47 million, across 6 different loans. Someone's been buying up our paper for months. Marcus felt ice water flood his veins. Find out who owns Frost Holdings. Today, this morning, now. After hanging up, he opened his laptop and began scrolling through news alerts. His breath caught on a headline from Business Insider. Volkov Diamond Empire, heiress resurfaces. After 4-year absence, Elena Volkov, spotted at Connecticut estate. The article included a photo of Elena getting out of a Mercedes. Not his tired, pregnant Elena. This woman looked regal despite her obvious pregnancy. Her dark hair pulled back to reveal bone structure he'd somehow stopped noticing. The caption identified the older woman beside her as Katerina Volkov, matriarch of the Russian diamond dynasty, worth an estimated $15 billion. Volkov. Elena's maiden name was Morgan. She'd told him her family was in retail, that they were estranged, that she had nothing. But Volkov? No. His hand shook as he Googled Elena Volkov, and the search results exploded with information he'd somehow never found before. Because she'd changed her name legally. Because she'd hidden from her own identity for years. Elena Catherine Volkov, only daughter of Dmitry and Natasha Volkov, both deceased, sole heir to Volkov Industries, the world's 3rd largest diamond conglomerate. Granddaughter of Katerina Volkov, the woman who turned a single Siberian mine into a global empire. Worth $15 billion. And he'd kicked her out of their apartment while she was pregnant with his daughter. Marcus? Sienna's voice was sleepy, seductive. Come back to bed. He couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. His phone rang again, his attorney this time. Marcus, I'm looking at some paperwork that just came across my desk. Your wife filed for divorce this morning. The filing includes demands for full custody, child support calculated on her assets, not yours. And Marcus, are you sitting down? What? She's seeking damages for emotional distress, fraudulent inducement, and misappropriation of marital assets. The amount she's claiming. His attorney paused. $14 million plus her legal fees. She doesn't have $14 to her name, let alone. Marcus, her attorney, is David Rothstein. He only takes cases he knows he'll win, and he only represents clients who can afford his $1 million retainer. Who exactly is your wife? The room tilted. Marcus ended the call and opened his email to find a message from an unknown sender. The subject line. We should talk about Frost Holdings. He clicked it open. Mr. Blackwell. My name is Katerina Volkov. I believe you're married to my granddaughter, though perhaps not for much longer. I wanted to personally inform you that Frost Holdings, which now controls $47 million of your company's debt, belongs to me. I also wanted you to know that I've contacted each of your major investors to share some interesting information about your financial practices, specifically how you've been using marital assets to fund your lifestyle with Miss Hart. Several have already indicated they'll be withdrawing their support. You have 30 days to pay your debts in full, or I will force Blackwell Technologies into bankruptcy and purchase the remains for pennies on the dollar. Then I'll install my granddaughter as CEO, and she'll have the pleasure of firing you from the company you built. This is what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. My granddaughter tried to call you yesterday while experiencing complications with her pregnancy. You hung up on her. For that alone, I would destroy you. But you've also stolen from her, humiliated her, and tried to erase her from your life while she carries your child. Mr. Blackwell, you just declared war on the Volkov family. I hope your mistress was worth it. Regards, Katerina Volkov. Marcus read the email 3 times, his heart hammering against his ribs. This couldn't be happening. This had to be some kind of elaborate bluff. But the debt was real. The investors pulling out, he could already see the emails flooding in. And Elena. He pulled up the Business Insider article again, studying the photo more carefully. The way Elena carried herself. The Mercedes that probably cost more than his condo. The massive estate in the background that looked like something from a historical drama. He'd been married to a billionaire heiress for 4 years and never known it. He'd kicked her out while pregnant because he thought she had nothing. And now she was about to take everything from him. Marcus arrived at Blackwell Technologies headquarters at 7 a.m. to find his head of security waiting in the lobby with an uncomfortable expression. Mr. Blackwell, we have a situation. What kind of situation? There are protesters outside. About 40 of them. They're holding signs about unpaid invoices and demanding payment from vendors you apparently owe money to. Marcus pushed through the revolving doors to see exactly what his security chief had described. Protesters lined the sidewalk, small business owners, by the look of them, holding signs that read Blackwell owes us $2.3 million, and pay your bills, Marcus. A news crew from Channel 7 was setting up cameras. This was coordinated, professional. Someone had organized these vendors, contacted the media, and timed it perfectly for maximum exposure. Someone named Katerina Volkov. Inside his office, Marcus found his entire executive team already assembled, their faces grim. Talk to me, he said, collapsing into his chair. Robert Chang, his CFO, pulled up a spreadsheet on the conference screen. It's worse than I thought. Frost Holdings doesn't just own our major loans. They've been systematically buying up every piece of debt we have. Vendor invoices, equipment leases, office rent, someone's been purchasing all of it at a premium and now holds it all in one place. How much total? $63 million. And they're calling everything due in 30 days. Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. We don't have $63 million in liquid assets. Not even close. We have $8 million in operational cash. Everything else is tied up in development, inventory, or accounts receivable that won't come due for months. Jennifer Park, his head of investor relations, spoke up. Marcus, I've had 12 investors call this morning. They're all asking the same questions about financial impropriety, misuse of funds, and your personal life. Someone sent them a dossier. What kind of dossier? Jennifer hesitated. It documents every expense you've charged to the company that was actually personal. The penthouse you bought for Miss Hart, listed as executive housing. The jewelry marked as client gifts. The Caribbean trips, classified as business development. She paused. Marcus, it's all accurate. I verified the receipts. This is a $2.3 million problem if the IRS gets involved. Jesus Christ. Marcus stood and walked to the window overlooking the protesters below. Can we fight this? Fight what? Robert asked. The debt is legitimate. The expenses are documented. The loans were legally sold. There's nothing to fight except the truth. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo of Elena in a hospital bed, her hand resting on her swollen belly, looking directly at the camera with an expression he'd never seen before. Not broken, not pleading. Triumphant. The message below read, your daughter kicked this morning. Strong, healthy kicks. Thought you should know, since you didn't ask. The Volkov estate's medical wing rivaled most private hospitals. Elena lay in a bed with a view of snow-covered gardens, monitoring equipment tracking both her vitals and the baby's heartbeat. 2 weeks of bed rest had given her time to think, to plan, and to remember who she'd been before Marcus Blackwell made her feel small. Katerina entered carrying a tray of tea and pastries. You need to eat more than toast, Elena. The baby needs nutrition. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. Volkov women don't starve ourselves over men who aren't worth our tears. Katerina set down the tray with characteristic firmness. I spoke with David Rothstein this morning. The divorce papers have been filed. Marcus has 30 days to respond. Elena picked at a pastry half-heartedly. He's called 17 times. And you've answered 0 times. Good. Katerina settled into the bedside chair. Let him panic. Let him scramble. Let him understand what it feels like to be powerless. I'm not trying to destroy him, grandmother. I just want my daughter to be safe and provided for. Then you're thinking too small. Katerina's eyes gleamed with something predatory. Elena, that man stole from you, humiliated you, put our family's heir at risk with his selfishness. He doesn't deserve mercy. He deserves to be made an example of. Dr. Chen knocked and entered, reviewing Elena's chart. Blood pressure is improving. The contractions have stopped completely. If you maintain this progress, I think we can downgrade you from strict bed rest to modified activity in another week. That's good news, Elena said quietly. It's excellent news. Your grandmother mentioned you've been under significant stress. Whatever changes you've made are working. Doctor, Chen smiled. This baby wants to stay put until she's ready. She's a fighter. After the doctor left, Elena stared at her hands. I sent Marcus a text. With a photo. Katerina raised an eyebrow. And nothing. No response. I thought maybe, if he saw me in the hospital, saw the baby was real, he might. Her voice broke. Why doesn't he care? Grandmother, why doesn't he want to know if his daughter is okay? Because Marcus Blackwell is a narcissist who only cares about things that serve his ego. You stopped serving his ego when you became pregnant and real and human. Katerina reached over and took Elena's hand. But his indifference is a gift, child. It frees you to do what needs to be done without guilt. Elena's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Elena, this is Sienna Hart. We need to talk, please. She showed the message to Katerina, who smiled coldly. The mistress grows nervous. How interesting. Should I respond? Absolutely. Tell her to meet you here tomorrow. I want to see what kind of woman helps a man destroy his pregnant wife. Sienna Hart had never felt nervous before. At 26, she'd built her career on confidence, beauty, and the ability to read what men wanted before they knew it themselves. She'd identified Marcus Blackwell as a target 18 months ago, successful, married to someone forgettable, ripe for an upgrade. It had been almost too easy. A few strategic wardrobe choices at the office. Some late-night work sessions where she'd listened to him complain about his wife's lack of ambition. The gradual transformation from colleague to confidant to lover. But now, driving through the gates of the Volkov estate in her leased BMW, Sienna felt the first tendrils of real fear. She'd Googled Elena Volkov obsessively for 3 days. The articles painted a picture so different from the mousy, pregnant woman Marcus had described. This Elena was heir to billions. This Elena had powerful family connections across 3 continents. This Elena had grandmother who'd survived Soviet purges and corporate wars that destroyed lesser dynasties. And Sienna had helped Marcus humiliate her. A butler led Sienna through hallways lined with art that probably cost more than she'd earn in her entire lifetime. Through open doors, she glimpsed rooms filled with antiques and portraits of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to judge her with painted eyes. Elena was sitting in a sunlit conservatory, surrounded by plants and winter light. 7 months pregnant, she wore a simple cashmere dress that probably cost $5,000. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, and her bone structure hidden for so long behind exhaustion and stress was striking. She didn't look like someone who'd been destroyed. She looked like someone who'd been freed. Miss Hart, Elena said calmly. Thank you for coming. Sienna's carefully prepared speech died in her throat. I wanted to apologize. For sleeping with my husband, for helping him steal our money, for calling security when I tried to tell him our daughter might die. Elena's voice was soft, but each word landed like a blow. Which part specifically are you apologizing for? Sienna sank into the chair across from Elena, her confidence crumbling. All of it. I didn't know you were. I didn't know who you were. And if you had known, would that have changed anything? Elena tilted her head. Or would you have just been more careful about being caught? The accuracy of that statement made Sienna flinch. Marcus told me you were clingy, needy. That you trapped him with a pregnancy. That I what? Made him cheat? Made him steal? Made him abandon his daughter? Elena's hand moved to her belly protectively. Miss Hart, I understand you're young and ambitious. I understand that Marcus can be charming when he wants something. But you're also an adult who made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. The company is collapsing. Marcus is falling apart, I just thought. I thought maybe you could tell your grandmother to back off, to give us time to. To what? Katerina Volkov's voice came from the doorway. She entered the conservatory like a queen entering court. Time to steal more money? Time to humiliate my granddaughter further? Time to put my great-granddaughter at even more risk? Sienna stood abruptly, recognizing danger when she saw it. I should go. Sit down, Miss Hart. It wasn't a request. You came here to beg for mercy. The least you can do is hear what mercy costs. Sienna sat. Katerina circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. You're pretty. I'll give you that. And young how old? 26, 27. Old enough to know better, but young enough to think rules don't apply to you. I made a mistake. You made a choice. Choices have consequences. Katerina stopped in front of her. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a sworn affidavit detailing every aspect of your affair with Marcus Blackwell. Dates, locations, gifts he bought with company money, conversations about his wife, everything. Sienna's face went pale. That would destroy him. Yes, it would. That's the point. Katerina's smile was sharp. In exchange, my attorneys won't file fraud charges against you for accepting gifts purchased with stolen funds. You'll walk away with your freedom and a very expensive lesson about the danger of underestimating quiet women. And if I refuse? Then you'll be named as a co-defendant in multiple lawsuits. Your career will be destroyed, and you'll spend the next 5 years in court watching your life savings evaporate. Katerina pulled out her phone. I have my attorney on speed dial. What's your choice? Miss Hart? Sienna looked at Elena, searching for any sign of mercy or compassion. Elena met her gaze steadily, her hand never leaving her pregnant belly. I'll sign, Sienna whispered. Smart girl. Katerina gestured to the butler waiting in the doorway. Peter will take you to my attorney's office. I expect this finished within the hour. After Sienna was escorted out, Elena exhaled slowly. That felt horrible. That felt like justice. Katerina sat beside her granddaughter. She helped Marcus destroy your life, Elena. She doesn't get to walk away without consequences, just because she's pretty and young. I know. I remember being young and stupid, making choices I regret. You left your family to find real love. That's foolish, perhaps, but not malicious. Katerina took Elena's hand. That woman seduced a married man, helped him steal from his wife, and laughed while you suffered. There's a difference between foolish and cruel. Elena was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now we wait for Marcus to make his next mistake. And trust me, child, desperate men always make mistakes. Marcus stood in the penthouse he'd bought for Sienna, reading the affidavit his attorney had just emailed him. Every affair documented, every gift listed, every lie exposed in clinical legal language that would be filed with the court within 48 hours. Sienna's signature was at the bottom, notarized and official. She sold me out, he said numbly. She actually sold me out. His attorney, David Rothstein, not the Rothstein representing Elena, but a different attorney who'd been his second choice after the first 3 declined his case, sighed heavily. Marcus, you need to understand your position. Elena's attorneys have documentation of every financial impropriety. They have testimony from your mistress. They have evidence that you abandoned your pregnant wife during a medical emergency. No judge is going to look favorably on this. What are my options? You have 2. Option 1. Fight this in court. Spend the next 3 years in litigation that will cost you millions, destroy your reputation, and ultimately lose anyway because the evidence against you is overwhelming. And option 2. Accept Elena's terms. Give her full custody with supervised visitation for you. Pay child support calculated on her assets, not yours. Sign over your shares in Blackwell Technologies to satisfy the marital debt. Walk away with whatever she allows you to keep. Marcus felt something break inside his chest. She wants my company. She wants you to understand what it feels like to lose everything you built, the same way you made her feel. Rothstein closed his laptop. Marcus, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never seen a case this one-sided. You're not negotiating from a position of strength. You're negotiating to minimize the damage. After his attorney left, Marcus poured himself whiskey and stared out at the Manhattan skyline. His phone rang his mother this time. Marcus, what the hell is going on? Your father just got a call from his golf partner asking if it's true you're being sued for $14 million. Are you getting divorced? Is Elena pregnant? Why didn't you tell us any of this? Mom, I can't talk right now. You can't talk? Your life is falling apart and you can't talk to your own mother? Her voice climbed toward hysteria. Marcus, we read the articles. Elena Volkov? You were married to a billionaire and you cheated on her with some actress? What were you thinking? I didn't know she was... You didn't know because you never bothered to ask. Your father and I taught you better than this. We taught you honor, commitment, family values. And you threw it all away for what? For some girl in a red dress? Marcus ended the call and threw his phone across the room. Everything was collapsing. His company, his reputation, his family, his future. And it was all because he'd underestimated the quiet woman who'd loved him enough to hide her real identity for 4 years. His phone buzzed with a text miraculously unbroken. Elena, the baby kicked again. She's strong. I thought you'd want to know, even though you won't respond. Even though you've made it clear you don't care. I'm naming her Natasha, after my mother. She deserved better than you as a father. But I'll make sure she knows her worth comes from being a Volkov, not from the man who abandoned her before she was born. For the first time since this nightmare began, Marcus felt tears burn his eyes. Not for himself. Not for the company he was losing or the reputation he'd destroyed. But for the daughter he'd never meet. For the woman he'd loved and thrown away. For the life he'd demolished with his own stupid, arrogant hands. He texted back, I'm sorry. For everything. You deserve better. Elena's response came instantly. Yes, I did. And now I have it. The Wall Street Journal article hit newsstands on a Tuesday morning, and by noon, Marcus Blackwell's entire world had exploded. Tech darling's dark secret, Marcus Blackwell, accused of embezzlement, abandonment of pregnant wife. The piece was devastating in its thoroughness. Tax documents showing personal expenses charged as business costs. Bank records revealing the systematic drainage of joint accounts. And worst of all, a timeline documenting his affair with Sienna Hart alongside his wife's pregnancy complications. The article included a quote from Katerina Volkov. Mr. Blackwell is learning an expensive lesson about the difference between success and character. One can be built through intelligence and hard work. The other reveals itself in how you treat people when they're vulnerable. By 2 p.m., Blackwell Technologies stock, which had gone public 18 months ago in a modest IPO, had lost 43% of its value. By 4 p.m., 3 more investors had withdrawn their support. By 6 p.m., Marcus was sitting in an emergency board meeting, facing calls for his immediate resignation. Gentlemen, please. Marcus stood at the head of the conference table, his tie loosened, his usual polish completely absent. This is a smear campaign. My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company. Thomas Brightwell, his lead investor and board chairman, slid a folder across the table. Actually, Marcus, it has everything to do with it. Your personal life was funded by company money. That's not just bad judgment, it's fraud. I'll pay it back. Every dollar. Just give me time. We don't have time. Thomas gestured to the windows overlooking Wall Street. There are protesters outside demanding your resignation. Our clients are calling asking if their data is secure with a company run by someone who steals from his own wife. The SEC has opened an inquiry. Time is the one thing you don't have. Jennifer Park, who'd been his loyal head of investor relations for 3 years, spoke up quietly. Marcus, I'm resigning effective immediately. I can't be associated with this anymore. I have a career to protect. One by one, 4 other executives announced similar decisions. Marcus watched his leadership team disintegrate in real time, each person choosing self-preservation over loyalty. So that's it? His voice cracked. 15 years building this company, and you're all just walking away. You walked away from your pregnant wife during a medical emergency, Thomas said coldly. Why should we show you more loyalty than you showed her? The vote was unanimous. Marcus Blackwell was removed as CEO of Blackwell Technologies, effective immediately. He would retain his shares currently worth $11 million, down from $19 million that morning, but would have no operational role in the company he'd founded. Security escorted him out of his own building at 7 p.m. The protesters had grown to nearly 100 people. They chanted his name like a curse as he pushed through them toward his car, cameras flashing, microphones thrust in his face. Mr. Blackwell, is it true you stole $2.3 million from your wife? Marcus, how do you respond to allegations of tax fraud? Will you be seeking custody of your daughter? He made it to his car and drove aimlessly through Manhattan, his mind a white noise of shock and disbelief. Everything he'd built was gone. Everything he'd worked for had evaporated in less than 2 weeks. His phone rang. His father. Don't bother coming home for Christmas. Richard Blackwell said without preamble. Your mother is humiliated. I'm humiliated. The club asked me to take a leave of absence because members are complaining about having to see me after what you've done. Dad, please? You abandoned a pregnant woman, Marcus. You stole from her while she was carrying your child. And then we find out she's worth billions and you were too stupid to even know it? His father's voice shook with rage. I don't know who you are anymore. I don't want to know. The call ended. Marcus pulled over in a parking garage and put his head on the steering wheel. 36 years old. No company, no reputation, no family, no future. And somewhere in Connecticut, his pregnant wife was probably watching his destruction with the same cold satisfaction he'd felt when he handed her those divorce papers. His phone buzzed with an email from David Rothstein. Marcus, Elena's attorneys are willing to meet tomorrow to discuss settlement terms. I strongly advise you to accept whatever they offer. You have no leverage left. Elena watched the news coverage of Marcus's board meeting from her bed in the medical wing. Katerina sat beside her, both women silent, as the reporters dissected Marcus's fall from grace with gleeful thoroughness. How do you feel? Katerina asked quietly. Elena considered the question. She'd expected to feel triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, she felt empty, hollow. The man she'd loved was being destroyed, and while he deserved consequences for what he'd done, watching it happen felt less satisfying than she'd imagined. I feel tired, she said finally. Tired of being angry. Tired of hurting. I just want this to be over, so I can focus on my daughter. It will be over soon. Marcus has nothing left to fight with. Katerina squeezed her hand. And then you can start building the life you deserve. Dr. Chen arrived for Elena's evening checkup, her expression pleased. Blood pressure is perfect. Baby's heartbeat is strong. I think we can officially downgrade you from bed rest to light activity. Short walks, gentle movement, but nothing strenuous. Can I travel? Where do you need to go? Elena looked at her grandmother. I want to see Marcus, face to face. I want to end this myself, not through lawyers and press releases. Katerina's expression hardened. Elena, that man doesn't deserve your time or your presence. This isn't about what he deserves. It's about what I need. Elena struggled to sit up, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. For 4 years, I let Marcus make me feel small. I let him make me doubt my worth. I need him to see me as I really am, not through news articles or legal documents. I need him to understand what he lost. Dr. Chen glanced between them. If you're going to Manhattan, you'll need someone with you at all times. And absolutely no stress. The moment you feel any contractions, any pain, you stop immediately. I'll have an entire security team, Elena said. And my grandmother. Katerina sighed heavily. You're as stubborn as your grandfather. Fine, but we do this my way. We meet Marcus on our terms, in a location I choose. with every conversation recorded for legal purposes. Elena nodded. Tomorrow. I want this finished before Natasha is born. I want to bring her into a world where this is already resolved. That night, Elena stood at her window, overlooking the estate's grounds, her hand on her belly, where Natasha kicked and squirmed. 7 months pregnant. And her daughter was already fierce, already fighting. Your father made a mistake, Elena whispered to her unborn child. He chose ambition over love, pride over family. And now he's learning what that costs. She felt tears slip down her cheeks. But you, my little fighter, you're going to grow up knowing your worth isn't determined by who stayed or who left. You're a Volkov. That means something. Natasha kicked hard, as if in agreement. Marcus arrived at the address. Rothstein had given him a private club in Midtown Manhattan that required memberships, starting at $50,000 annually. He'd been here once before, years ago, trying unsuccessfully to network with the kind of old money that never took tech entrepreneurs seriously. Now, he was being escorted through its mahogany-paneled hallways, like a criminal being led to sentencing. Elena waited in a private dining room overlooking Central Park. She wore a cream cashmere dress that probably cost more than his car payment, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. 7 months pregnant, she was radiant in a way he'd somehow stopped seeing during their marriage. Katerina Volkov sat beside her, dressed in black like she was attending a funeral. His funeral, Marcus realized. Mr. Blackwell. Elena's voice was calm, professional. Please sit. Marcus sat across from them, feeling like a student called to the principal's office. Elena, let me speak first. She folded her hands on the table. You called this meeting to discuss settlement terms. My attorneys have prepared a document outlining what I'm willing to accept. David Rothstein slid a folder across the table. Marcus opened it and felt his stomach drop. You want full custody. No joint custody at all. You'll have supervised visitation. 4 hours every other Saturday, supervised by a court-appointed mediator. As Natasha gets older, if you prove yourself to be a stable, positive presence in her life, we can revisit the arrangement. 4 hours every 2 weeks? Elena, she's my daughter. Is she? Katerina's voice cut like a blade. Because you hung up on her mother when she called to say the pregnancy was at risk. You never asked if she was okay. You called it manipulation. So tell me, Mr. Blackwell, what exactly makes you a father besides contributing sperm? Marcus felt his face flush. I made mistakes. I was angry and hurt, and I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking very clearly, Elena interrupted. You were thinking about yourself, your needs, your desires, your version of happiness. You didn't consider me at all. And you certainly didn't consider our daughter. Marcus looked down at the settlement terms. The child support. You're calculating it based on your assets, not mine. That's $50,000 a month. That's what our daughter deserves. Healthcare, education, security, opportunities. Elena's voice never wavered. You'll pay it, or I'll pursue the full $14 million in damages my attorneys believe I'm owed for emotional distress and fraud. I don't have $14 million. No. But you have $11 million in company stock. I'm willing to accept that as payment in full, which means you'll walk away from this marriage with approximately $300,000 in liquid assets, and whatever personal property isn't jointly owned. Elena leaned forward slightly. Marcus, I'm giving you a chance to start over. Most people in your situation would leave with nothing. This is generous? He laughed bitterly. You're taking everything I built. No, I'm taking what you owe. There's a difference. Elena pulled out her phone and showed him a spreadsheet. Over 4 years of marriage, you transferred $340,000 from our joint accounts to your personal holdings. You spent $2.3 million in company funds on personal expenses. You purchased a penthouse for your mistress worth $1.8 million using credit lines that I'm now legally liable for. You owe me $4.44 million before we even discuss emotional damages. The numbers blurred on the screen. Marcus had never added it up. Had never thought about how each small decision, each transferred fund, each expensive gift for Sienna, each luxury he justified as a business necessity had accumulated into something that looked, in stark black and white, like systematic theft. "I never meant to hurt you," he said quietly. "Yes, you did." Elena's voice was soft but firm, maybe not consciously. "But every time you chose Sienna over me, every time you blamed me for being needy when I was just pregnant and scared, every time you made me feel like I was the problem, you were choosing to hurt me. You were choosing your comfort over my dignity." Katerina pulled out another document. "There's one more term, Mr. Blackwell. You'll sign a non-disclosure agreement. You will not speak to the press about Elena, about this divorce, or about the Volkov family. You will not write a book, give interviews, or post on social media about any aspect of your marriage or its dissolution. You're buying my silence. We're protecting my granddaughter and great-granddaughter from your continued manipulation." Katerina's smile was cold. "Sign these documents, Mr. Blackwell, and you walk away with enough money to start over somewhere far from here. Refuse, and we'll see you in court for the next 3 years while your remaining assets evaporate in legal fees." Marcus looked at Elena, searching for any trace of the woman who'd loved him, who'd laughed at his jokes and believed in his dreams, and made him feel like he could conquer the world. She was gone. In her place sat someone he didn't recognize, someone powerful and certain and completely beyond his reach. "I loved you," he said desperately. "I know I destroyed it, but I did love you once." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "I know. I loved you too. Enough to give up everything I was born to be. Enough to hide from my own family for 4 years. Enough to believe that what we had was worth more than billions of dollars." She placed her hand on her belly. "But love isn't enough when it's one-sided. Love isn't enough when one person is willing to sacrifice everything and the other person is just waiting for a better offer. If I'd known who you really were, then you would have stayed for the wrong reasons." Elena's voice hardened. "You would have stayed for the money, the connections, the social elevation. Not for me. Never for me." She was right. Marcus could see it in her eyes. She knew exactly what he would have done if he'd discovered her identity. He would have been the perfect husband, attentive, devoted, publicly proud. Not because he loved her, but because she represented everything he'd ever wanted. Access, status, power. And she denied him all of it by being brave enough to be ordinary. "I'll sign," he said numbly. Rothstein produced a pen. Marcus signed his name on 7 different documents, each one feeling like he was erasing a piece of himself. The divorce decree, the custody agreement, the financial settlement, the non-disclosure agreement, the asset transfer forms, the acknowledgement of debt, the waiver of future claims. When it was finished, Katerina stood. "Your attorney will receive copies of everything within the hour. You have 60 days to vacate the marital apartment and transfer the agreed-upon assets. After that, you are not to contact Elena unless it concerns your daughter's welfare and goes through the appropriate legal channels." Elena remained seated, her hand never leaving her belly. "Marcus," he looked up, hoping for something, forgiveness, maybe, or at least understanding. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said quietly. "I hope you find someone who makes you happy. But more than that, I hope you learn to be the kind of man who deserves happiness. The kind of man who doesn't destroy people who love him." Marcus left the club in a daze, stepping out into Manhattan's evening rush hour feeling like he'd just attended his own funeral. Behind him, in that private dining room, sat the woman who'd loved him enough to hide a billion-dollar legacy. The woman he'd thrown away because he'd been too blind to see her worth. His phone buzzed. A text from Sienna. "I saw the news. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I think she's being cruel." Marcus stared at the message and felt something that might have been laughter or might have been a sob rise in his throat. Sienna thought Elena was being cruel. Sienna, who'd helped him humiliate his pregnant wife. Sienna, who'd testified against him to save herself. Sienna, who'd never loved him any more than he'd loved Elena. He deleted the message without responding. In the club behind him, Elena stood carefully and walked to the window overlooking Central Park. Katerina joined her, both women silent. You gave him more mercy than he deserved, Katerina said finally. I gave him what I needed to give to move forward. Elena watched the city lights begin to sparkle against the darkening sky. He's not my problem anymore, grandmother. He's just the man who used to be my husband, and soon, he'll just be the man who pays child support and sees his daughter every other Saturday. And you? What will you be? Elena smiled, feeling Natasha kick strong and steady against her ribs. I'll be what I always was, a Volkov. And that's more than enough. 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal paperwork, doctor's appointments, and the strange adjustment of living in the Volkov estate after 4 years of deliberate poverty. Elena found herself in the surreal position of relearning luxury, how to accept that someone else prepared her meals, that she didn't need to check price tags, that her daughter would never know what it felt like to worry about money. The media frenzy had finally begun to die down. Marcus had followed the non-disclosure agreement to the letter, refusing all interview requests and deleting his social media accounts entirely. According to Jennifer Park, who'd reached out to Elena with an apologetic email, Marcus had left New York completely. Rumor placed him in Seattle, working as a consultant for a small tech startup, living in a modest apartment, and trying to rebuild something from the ashes of his destroyed reputation. Elena told herself she didn't care where he was or what he was doing. Told herself the occasional pang of concern was just muscle memory from 4 years of loving him. Told herself that the dreams where she relived their early days together before ambition poisoned him, before pregnancy made her invisible, were just pregnancy hormones making her sentimental. But late at night, when Natasha kicked and squirmed and made her mother's sleep impossible, Elena wondered what might have been different if Marcus had known from the beginning who she really was. Would he have been faithful? Would he have valued her more? Or would he have just been more careful about getting caught? You're thinking about him again, Katerina said from the doorway of Elena's bedroom. It was 2 a.m., and Elena had been standing at the window watching snow fall over the gardens. I'm thinking about what I'm going to tell Natasha when she asks why her father isn't here. Katerina entered, carrying 2 cups of warm milk. You'll tell her the truth. That her father made choices that hurt people, and that actions have consequences. But you'll also tell her that she was wanted, loved, and protected from the moment you knew she existed. Elena accepted the milk and settled into the window seat. At 8 months pregnant now, every position was uncomfortable. But the view of the snow-covered estate reminded her of childhood winters when her parents were still alive and the world had felt safe. Do you think I was wrong to let him off so easily? Elena asked. Some days I wake up angry that he gets to start over while I'm about to be a single mother. You're not a single mother. You're a Volkov mother. There's a difference. Katerina sat beside her. And no, I don't think you were wrong. Vengeance feels satisfying in the moment, but it doesn't sustain you. You chose justice over revenge, and you chose your daughter's future over your own hurt. That takes strength most people never develop. Elena's phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from David Rothstein, not the attorney who'd handled her divorce, but a different David Rothstein. Dr. David Rothstein, the pediatric surgeon she'd met at a hospital fundraiser 2 weeks ago when Katerina had insisted Elena start attending social events to remind Manhattan society that Volkovs don't hide. Still awake at 2 a.m.? Pregnancy insomnia is brutal. When my sister was pregnant with her twins, she used to reorganize closets at 3 inches the morning just to stay busy. David. Elena smiled despite herself. David was different from Marcus in every conceivable way. Where Marcus had been ambitious and aggressive, David was steady and kind. Where Marcus had talked endlessly about his own achievements, David asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Where Marcus had seen her pregnancy as an inconvenience, David had spent 20 minutes at the fundraiser discussing the best pediatricians in Manhattan and offering to make introductions. Reorganizing closets sounds productive. I'm just staring at snow and wondering if I've made terrible life choices. At 2 a.m., everyone thinks they've made terrible life choices. It's a universal rule. Want some company? I make excellent hot chocolate, and I'm on call tonight at Presbyterian, which is only 20 minutes from your grandmother's estate. David. Elena hesitated, her finger hovering over the keyboard. Was this appropriate? She was 8 months pregnant, barely divorced, and still processing the implosion of her marriage. The last thing she needed was complications with another man. But David wasn't Marcus. David wasn't asking for anything except to sit with someone who couldn't sleep and maybe make the night feel less lonely. Hot chocolate sounds perfect. The gate code is 4427E. Katerina was watching her with knowing eyes. The surgeon. He's just a friend, grandmother. Friends are good. Friends who look at you the way that man looked at you at the fundraiser are even better. Katerina stood, smoothing her silk robe. I'll have the kitchen prepare something for when your friend arrives. And Elena? Yes. Your grandfather used to say that the best revenge is living well. You're starting to live again. Don't let guilt about moving forward stop you from actually moving forward. After Katerina left, Elena checked her reflection in the mirror. 8 months pregnant, wearing an old cashmere nightgown, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. This was definitely not living well by any conventional standard. But when she thought about David arriving with hot chocolate and conversation, she didn't feel the anxiety she'd felt with Marcus toward the end. She felt something lighter. Hope, maybe. Or just the possibility of it. David Rothstein arrived at 2:47 a.m., carrying a thermos of hot chocolate and a bag from an all-night bakery. At 42, he had the kind of face that inspired confidence, strong features, kind eyes, and silver threading through his dark hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. I brought croissants, he said when Elena opened the door. My sister always said carbs help with the 2 a.m. existential dread. Elena laughed, the sound surprising her. Your sister sounds wise. They settled in the estate's smaller library, not the formal one where Elena had signed her divorce papers, but a cozier room lined with first editions and comfortable chairs that invited hours of reading. David poured hot chocolate into the china cups Katerina had left, and for a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence. So, David said finally, 2 a.m. existential dread. What's the specific flavor tonight? General life regret or something more focused? Wondering if I made the right choices. If hiding my identity for 4 years was mature self-discovery or just cowardice. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Wondering what I'm supposed to tell my daughter about her father. What do you want to tell her? The truth. That I loved him enough to give up everything for him, and that he loved himself more than he could ever love anyone else. Elena felt tears threaten. God, that sounds bitter. It sounds honest. David leaned forward. Elena, can I tell you something as a doctor who's delivered hundreds of babies and watched hundreds of families form? Please. The parents who worry about being good parents are usually the good parents. The ones who never question their choices, who never worry about their children's emotional well-being. Those are the ones who end up raising kids who need therapy. He smiled gently. You're 8 months pregnant, processing a divorce, and worried about how to explain complex adult relationships to a daughter who won't ask those questions for years. That tells me you're going to be fine. Elena felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you, I needed to hear that. Also, for what it's worth, I don't think hiding your identity was cowardice. I think it took remarkable courage to walk away from billions of dollars to find out who you were without the family name. David's voice was thoughtful. Most people spend their lives trying to become someone important. You spent 4 years trying to be ordinary. That's brave in its own way. They talked until dawn broke over the estate, conversation flowing easily from medicine to literature to family to the strange experience of rebuilding your life after it falls apart. David shared stories about his sister's chaotic twins, his own divorce 10 years ago from a woman who'd wanted a society husband while he wanted to be a surgeon, his collection of terrible vinyl records from the 1,970 seconds. Elena found herself laughing genuinely, for the first time in months, found herself thinking about something other than Marcus and betrayal and the wreckage of her marriage. When David finally left at 6 a.m. to head to the hospital for his shift, he paused at the door. Elena, I know you're going through a lot right now. I know the timing is terrible, but I'd like to see you again. Not as a doctor, not as a friend of the family. Just as someone who thinks you're remarkable and would like to know you better. Elena's heart stuttered. David, I'm 8 months pregnant and barely divorced. I know. I'm not asking you to make any decisions or commitments. I'm just asking if I can take you to dinner after the baby is born. Whenever you're ready. Even if that's 6 months from now or a year from now. He smiled. I'm a very patient man, Elena. It's a surgeon thing. We learn to wait for the right moment. Okay, Elena heard herself say. Yes, after the baby. When I've figured out how to be a mother and a person again. Yes. David's smile transformed his entire face. I'll wait. After he left, Elena stood in the foyer, feeling dizzy with possibility. Natasha kicked hard, as if commenting on the situation. I know, Elena whispered to her daughter. It's too soon. It's complicated. But maybe grandmother's right. Maybe the best revenge really is living well. Marcus stood in his small Seattle apartment, unpacking boxes that represented everything he'd salvaged from his old life, a few suits, some books. The watch Elena had given him for their first anniversary, which he couldn't bring himself to sell, despite needing the money. He'd found work as a consultant for a small tech startup, nothing glamorous, nothing that would make headlines, but honest work that paid $120,000 a year plus equity that would probably never be worth anything. After paying child support, taxes, and his court-mandated restitution to former investors, he lived on approximately $3,000 a month. It was humbling. It was also, he was beginning to realize, what he deserved. His phone rang. His mother, calling for the first time since his father had disowned him. Marcus. Her voice was cautious. How are you? I'm alive, Mom. That's about all I can say. Your father wanted me to tell you that we've decided to include you in Christmas again, if you want to come. If you're willing to apologize to the family for the embarrassment you caused. Marcus closed his eyes. Tell Dad I appreciate the invitation, but I don't think I'm ready to apologize for my humiliation. I'm still processing my own. Marcus. Mom, I destroyed my marriage. I stole from my wife. I abandoned my pregnant daughter. I don't need Dad to tell me I screwed up. I'm living with those consequences every single day. His voice cracked, and the worst part, the absolute worst part. Elena gave me mercy I didn't deserve. She could have destroyed me completely. Instead, she gave me a chance to start over. And I don't know how to live with that kind of grace from someone I treated so badly. His mother was quiet for a long moment. You really loved her, didn't you? I thought I did. But looking back, I don't think I knew how to love anyone except myself. I loved the idea of her, the uncomplicated, undemanding wife who made me feel important. But I never saw her as a real person, with her own needs and worth. Marcus sank onto his second-hand couch. Now I see her everywhere. In every news article about the Volkov family. Every society page photo where she looks happy and beautiful and free. And I realize I never really knew her at all. Maybe you can apologize. Maybe you can. No, Mom. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. I can't contact Elena unless it concerns our daughter. And I don't even have visitation rights yet because I haven't completed the court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. He laughed bitterly. I have to prove to a judge that I'm capable of being a father before I'm allowed to meet my own child. After his mother hung up, Marcus opened his laptop and Googled Elena's name. The search results had shifted in the past 3 weeks. Less about the divorce, more about her involvement in Volkov Industries. There was a photo from a hospital fundraiser showing Elena in an elegant maternity dress, laughing at something someone off-camera had said. She looked radiant, happy, completely and utterly beyond his reach. The man standing beside her in the photo was identified as Dr. David Rothstein, a pediatric surgeon and hospital board member. The caption noted they'd been seen together at multiple charity events over the past 2 weeks. Marcus felt something toxic and familiar rise in his chest. Jealousy. The same jealousy that had driven him to Sienna when Elena's pregnancy had made her less exciting. The same jealousy that had made him resent Elena's quiet strength instead of cherishing it. He closed the laptop and walked to his window overlooking Seattle's rainy streets. Somewhere on the East Coast, his daughter was growing inside a woman he'd loved and destroyed. Somewhere, Elena was building a life that didn't include him. And somewhere in the wreckage of his choices, Marcus had to find a way to become someone worthy of the mercy he'd been given. His therapist, court-mandated, $200 a session he could barely afford, had told him that redemption wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic apologies. It was about consistent, humble action over time. It was about showing up and doing the work even when no one was watching or praising you for it. Marcus pulled out the workbook his parenting class instructor had given him. Building Healthy Relationships with Your Children, a guide for absent fathers. The title alone was humiliating, but he opened it and began reading. If he couldn't be the husband Elena deserved, maybe just maybe he could learn to be the father Natasha needed. It wasn't redemption, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Elena's contractions began at 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks before her due date. Not the sharp, immediate labor of emergency, but the slow, building intensity that announced Natasha was ready to make her entrance. Katerina was at her side within minutes. Already dressed and calling Dr. Chen. How far apart are the contractions? 7 minutes, maybe 8. Elena gripped the bedpost, breathing through the wave of pain. It's early. She's not supposed to come for another 3 weeks. Babies have their own schedules, dear. Let's get you to the hospital. The drive to Presbyterian Hospital was surreal. Snow was falling again, coating Manhattan in white, and Elena found herself thinking about the night Marcus had kicked her out, how different everything had been then. How broken she'd felt. How impossible the future had seemed. Now, 8 months later, she was about to meet her daughter. And she wasn't scared. She wasn't alone. She was surrounded by family and doctors, and the certain knowledge that whatever challenges lay ahead, she had the resources and strength to face them. Dr. Chen was waiting at the hospital entrance. Right on time, Natasha. Your mother's been talking about you for months. The labor lasted 11 hours. Not easy, but not traumatic. Elena had Katerina on one side and a rotating team of nurses on the other. All of them encouraging her through each contraction, each breath, each moment of wondering if she had the strength to continue. And then, at 2:17 p.m. on a snowy Thursday afternoon, Natasha Elena Volkov entered the world. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Dark hair like her mother. Strong lungs that announced her presence to the entire maternity ward. Perfect. She's beautiful, Dr. Chen said, placing the baby on Elena's chest. Absolutely perfect. Elena looked down at her daughter, at this tiny person who'd survived everything, who'd kicked and fought and refused to give up even when stress and fear had threatened both their lives. Natasha's eyes were closed, her tiny fist gripping Elena's finger with surprising strength. Hello, little fighter, Elena whispered. We made it. We're going to be okay. Katerina stood beside the bed with tears streaming down her face, the first time Elena had ever seen her grandmother cry. She has your mother's nose, your father's chin. She's a Volkov through and through. Dr. Rothstein arrived an hour later, still in his scrubs from a surgery. He'd texted Elena that morning after she'd messaged him that labor had started. And though she told him he didn't need to come, he'd shown up anyway. I brought flowers, he said from the doorway. And congratulations. Though, I'm not sure congratulations are adequate for bringing an entire human into existence. Elena smiled, exhausted and elated, and completely overwhelmed. Come meet her. David approached the bed carefully, his surgeon's hands gentle as he looked at Natasha. She's remarkable. Strong grip, good color, obviously brilliant based on how intently she's studying your face. He looked up at Elena. You did an amazing thing today. I had help. You had support. But you did the hard part. David's voice was soft. Elena, I know this isn't the right time, but I need you to know something. Watching you go through everything, over the past month, the divorce, the media scrutiny, the preparation for this moment, I've been in awe of your strength. And now, seeing you with your daughter, I'm even more certain that whenever you're ready, I'd like to be part of your life. Not to replace anything or anyone, just to be someone who values you the way you deserve. Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks. David, I'm a disaster. I'm a single mother, with $1 billion legacy I barely understand, and an ex-husband who destroyed me, and And you're remarkable. You're kind and strong and brave enough to rebuild your entire life while growing a human being. You're exactly the kind of person I want in my life, he smiled. But I'm also a patient man. So I'll wait. However long it takes. After David left, Elena held Natasha close and thought about the future stretching before them. Her daughter would grow up knowing her worth, knowing she came from a family that survived revolutions and wars and corporate battles. Natasha would never doubt herself the way Elena had doubted herself, would never hide from her own identity or let anyone make her feel small. And maybe, Elena thought, watching the snow fall outside her hospital window, maybe she could learn those lessons too. Maybe it wasn't too late to become the woman her daughter would look up to, the woman her grandmother had always known she could be. Strong, certain, unafraid. A Volkov.